Hello, everybody. Welcome to MBO's webinar for today. This is Painless Prospecting for Independent Consultants, and I'm excited we have Tom Martin, who's going to be presenting it. Just waiting for everybody to join. My name is Sarah Condi. I am a manager of consultant services here at MBO, and I manage the department who speaks with independent consultants who might be interested in our services, and we go through a consultation call and kind of see if there's a fit. And I've been here for about 6 years. So what are those services? Just really quick, what we do is we make it easy for independent consultants and their clients to work together. So really what that means is we run a variety of back office functions for our consultants so they can focus on the work that they love. We kind of take care of the taxes, the invoicing, the contracts, liability insurances, all that stuff so that they don't have to. And we also work hard to provide value to independents by creating a wide range of educational content that's featured on our Independence Guide, on our website, and as well as this webinar series. So next we're going to do some quick housekeeping before we begin. Here you can see the webinar controls. Please click the button with the small screen icon next to it to move it into full screen mode. And don't hesitate to send us questions throughout the presentation by typing them into the box as it shows. We'll answer them all at the end of the presentation. One question we get that we will answer now, because we get it all the time, is that yes, we will be emailing you a recording of this webinar, so don't worry if you miss anything. We'll make sure you get it, and you should see it in your inbox about early next week. We will also be live tweeting today's webinar at #MBOWeb. And if you have any questions or comments, you can put them there as well, and we will be moderating that and also answering those questions at the end of the presentation. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Tom Martin. He's an author, digital strategist, keynote speaker, 20-year veteran of the advertising and marketing business, and he has a book out for sale right now, The Invisible Sale, and actually I'm pretty excited. We're going to be giving away 30 copies of that today to our registrants randomly. So if you are one of the lucky recipients, you will receive an email from us letting you know. So that's something to look forward to, so fingers crossed for you guys. And now here, without further ado, here is Tom to take over and teach us.
Well, thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. We are going to take about the next 45 minutes to go through what I call painless prospecting. This is a presentation that is designed specifically for independent consultants. It is the process that I use at my consultancy, which is probably doesn't look a whole lot unlike your individual businesses yourself. So hopefully you're going to find some good value. I've left about 15 minutes in our time for a Q&A, but I'll also give you my contact information at the end. If we don't get to your question, feel free to email me. Or as you can see from the screen in front of you, there's my Twitter handle. Feel free to tweet me. Usually do everything I can to make sure that I answer questions that come out of webinars. I want to start today by asking you all a question, and obviously I won't be able to see your response, but the question I want to ask you to think about is, do you have a plan, or what is your plan for the day when every one of your clients fires you on the same day, approximately the same time, and your business instantly implodes? Now, I can't see how many of you might be able to raise your hand and say, yeah, I have that plan, Tom. That's in my portfolio of ideas. But unless you're vastly different than 99.9% of the people I've ever given this presentation to, you don't have that plan. Because none of us have that plan. None of us think about that scenario. We all plan never to let one client become too much of our billings and things of this nature. But we just don't plan for the day when every single client fires us on the same day, roughly the same time. And our revenue stream goes from fine to zero in a nanosecond. I can tell you I have that plan, but I have it because I learned it the hard way. You see, in August 29 of 2005, my wife and I had a small ad agency. Converse Digital is actually my second company. And on that day when the levees broke and flooded New Orleans, Louisiana, where we live, effectively shut our city down. I mean, they literally closed our city for 30 days. No one could live here. and effectively shut it down for about 3 months. We were a small New Orleans-based ad agency doing business for New Orleans-based clients who service New Orleans-based customers. And all of that imploded in a nanosecond. And I grew up in the ad business. I was the biz dev guy. I was the guy whose job it was to build the business pipeline for the agencies that I worked for. And I had to sit across the table on a very hot Texas day and look at my wife and tell her I don't have any answers, because even if I start today really going after a whole different set of prospects, i.e. companies who didn't function and live in New Orleans, Louisiana, I knew from experience I'm 90 days away at minimum from a good contract, maybe 120. And at that moment, in that day, what was seared into me is that I don't care if you're an internet-based company or a physical-based company. If you don't have clients, you don't have a company. And you can't rely on simply just doing good work and word of mouth and things of this nature to continue to grow your company. If you want to ensure the longevity of your company, the only way to do that is to make sure that you have a consistent and constant inbound flow of new prospects that you can convert into business. And in that day in 2009, I began a journey that 2005, I began a journey that really culminated in 2010 when I formed the company I have now, Converse Digital, in which I moved everything I used to do, all of the ways I used to build business, I pushed all of that aside, and I moved completely to what I call a painless prospecting system. And that is, in 4 years that I've been in business, I've grown about 25% every year. I have not made a cold call. I have not sent an unsolicited piece of direct mail. I have not run an ad or paid for a sponsorship or paid to attend a conference or a trade show. I basically have done none of the things that I spent the first 15 years of my career doing to develop business. Instead, I have focused on publishing and building content and helping people in a way that has now resulted in every day new leads come into the company that are pre-qualified and more or less pretty sure they kind of want to do business with us. And that's what a painless prospecting system is. It is a digitally powered machine that runs 24/7, 365, and has one and only one purpose: to drive new qualified leads into your consultancy. Leads that you don't close via an RFP process or a competitive pitch. Leads that you don't close at 25%, which when I was in the ad agency traditional side, if we won 25, 30% of our pitches or won that much business, converted that much, we were feeling pretty good about ourselves. If I converted that little now, I'd be out of business. I went from converting 25 to 85% of the leads that come in. Again, because when the lead arrives in a painless prospecting system, the folks on the other end of the lead are pretty sure they want to do business with you. It's really just a couple of fine-tuned questions, and then it really comes down to, pricing. And I will tell you, most of the ones we lose, pretty much all the ones we lose, is because of pricing. But that's okay. If I'm going to lose something, a piece of business, I want to lose because I'm too expensive, not because I'm having to fight or I can't get in the door, etc. And so today what we're going to go through is I'm going to take you through how this process works and show you how you can apply it yourself to your own company. Because it's built on the model that I've built over the last 4 years, which as independent consultants, many of you probably are following a similar model. Now, the whole thing is premised on a concept that Andy Grove, the former CEO of Intel, called a strategic inflection point. And that is a point in time where within an industry, the fundamentals of how you go to market dramatically change. You can't just do some sort of a line extension or adopt a new piece of technology. I mean, you have to really step back and reevaluate how you're going to go to market. That is where we are today. We've been in this transition for about 10 years, but it has come full force, and with the ability to find any piece of information at any time, anywhere via a mobile phone, we've come full circle. And that is that we are now dealing with self-educated buyers. It used to be 5, 10 years ago, if somebody wanted to find out about your company or see what your services are or those of your competitors, they would have to call you. They would have to contact you to get that information. Nowadays, they simply turn to Google. And that's what buyers are doing. They're hiding behind the anonymity of a Google search. They're going out there and they're researching people and agencies and consultants the way they've always wanted to, in secret. Nobody ever wants to raise their hand and tell a salesperson or an owner of a business, I'm in the market for your services, because they know what's going to happen. They know they're going to get put into the sales database, and they are going to get pummeled until they do with emails and phone calls and all the sorts of marketing materials. And they're going to get pummeled until one of two things happen. Either they buy or they die. And you're not, if you're a good salesperson, you're not going to let them out of your funnel. You're going to keep hammering to them until they either buy something for you or they die, because a good salesperson never takes anybody out of the database. And they know that. And so they don't really want to tell you they're in the market for your business. And if they're already working with one of your competitors, they sure as heck don't want to tell you, because their current partner will find out. So what Google's allowing people to do is remain invisible, conduct their research in an anonymous manner, whether they, so that they can find the solution they want, and then only reach out to that solution. Additionally, depending on the industry that you're in, if you're in, say, like a marketing industry like I am, there's a lot of passive research going on, because people that I sell to, the people that own businesses or market businesses, they're always consuming content around sales and marketing. They're always looking for new ideas, new information. And again, it used to be that they would have to subscribe to a magazine or subscribe to some sort of a newsletter. Not anymore. There's so much good, solid information that's freely available to people. They don't even have to subscribe. Again, whether they're in that active Google search or if they're the passive, I'm consuming content and aware of opportunity search, they're invisible. Research has been done across the board, and we see a lot of numbers in the consumer realm, but these are B2B numbers. 77% of B2B buyers conduct research before contacting a salesperson. Those that are conducting that research, they're more than halfway down the research process, or the sales funnel process, if you will, before they contact a salesperson. And probably the scariest data point of all is that more than half of the folks are going all the way to shortlist. Now, if you're like me, I grew up in an RFP world. I grew up in a competitive pitch environment world. This data scares me, because I know that once you're on the shortlist, that's it. The review is closed. The client is no longer looking at possible vendors. They're now deciding which of the vendors on the list is going to get the business. So if over half of these buyers are getting all the way down to shortlist before they make themselves visible to the prospective companies and vendors they might hire, that means you might be leaving half your business on the table and you don't even know it. And as an owner of a company, that scares the heck out of me. Now, I would tell you one thing about data. Don't take any one of these data points as a truth. Instead, look at them as a triangulation of a trend. Whether they're 100% accurate, whether they're your particular category or not, is a little bit irrelevant. What's relevant is that when you take them together and triangulate them, you clearly see a movement to a self-education buyer. And that self-education buyer, you're only going to win if you're part of their education process with your content. Because if you're not helping to educate them, they're not going to find you, you're not going to make the short list, and you're probably not going to get the business. Now, a painless prospecting system is built on scientific principles. Specifically, it's built on the law of propinquity. The law of propinquity is a scientific theory that's been proven multiple times of research throughout the years. And what it says is that the greater physical or psychological proximity between people, the greater chance they will form a friendship or romantic relationship. In fact, most of the research is done amongst the marriage realm. If any of you have married somebody you work with, you are a benefactor of what's called industrial propinquity. As myself, I married a woman that I worked with, and it's that proximity of being in the same office that you constantly run into one another that's a direct variable that led to you ultimately getting married. MIT did some studies back in the 50s where they looked at students in student housing, and they tried to figure out which ones were going to become best friends. And what they found is that the ones who became best friends tend to live right next door to one another. If they didn't live next door to one another, one of them lived next to the stairway. And what it is it's that opportunity to interact. And the way this works in a marketing realm is very simple. The first time you see or run into a brand or someone's content online, you see them. You become aware of them. You might even remember their name. You might remember who authored the cool blog post or the great article that you just saw. As you are online doing more research, you run into them again and again and again, and you start to not just be aware of them, you start to get to know them. You start to say, oh, wow, that's Tom Martin's stuff, that's Tom Martin's stuff, that's Tom Martin's stuff. And you start to get a sense of who Tom Martin is as a consultant. You start to get a sense of what Converse Digital stands for as a company. You get a sense of how we approach digital marketing. And as you get to know us through our content, what happens is you start to get the opportunity to find more things about us that you like. As you read more of our content, as you see more of how we think, you start to find more places where you can go, wow, I like that, I like that, I like that. If you find enough things that you like about us, eventually when you're in the market for digital strategy or digitally powered sales prospecting programs, you're going to hire me. You're going to hire me because you already like me, you already know me. I have there's a safety and a security that you're going to feel with me. I'm a known quantity. All the things that you want in a sales prospecting process. All because you consistently run into my content, possibly on my own website, but also more than likely spread around the internet on other websites. Those other websites are what I call Propinquity Points. Propinquity Points are any place that your target audience is looking to for information to do their job better, to make buying decisions related to your particular area of expertise, or where they're just frequently there on a given basis. Now, it doesn't mean that if you're, your target audience are a big sports fan, ESPN is not a propinquity point for you. I mean where people are frequently going for business-related information, information that they, again, use to help them educate themselves, be better at their jobs, and so forth. Now, propinquity points, the way this sets up is like this. Anytime somebody's going to buy anything in this world, they're going to go to the internet and they're going to do a Google search or a Yahoo or a Bing, but they're going to search the web. That's that active process that we talked about. Now, in addition to that, they're probably and very likely going to turn to their social webs. If they're on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or Google, more and more you are seeing people crowdsource recommendations. They're turning to their friends and followers, and they're using that as a shortcut. And they're doing that because Google, you type anything in Google, you get 1 million results, of which the quality is dubious, depending on where you are in the search string. So they're saying, you know what, I can do that and do all the work myself, or I can just ask my friends and followers, and somebody probably has done this or bought this or might know about this, and they can help short-circuit that. They're still going to follow the traditional ask a friend model. They're going to email people. They're going to talk to people. And they're also going to look on websites. Those are the propinquity points that you want to find. You want to find what are those websites. What are those places that they are looking to for information, that they value the information, that they think, if it's written about here, it's real, it's valuable, it's good quality information that I should consume and factor into my decision. So the trick becomes, can you find those websites? Now, there are lots of ways to find and define propinquity points. In the book, there's a whole chapter on this, which obviously I can't get into today. We don't have enough time, but I do want to show you one super simple, super easy approach that every single one of you, when you get off of this webinar, can begin to do immediately. And it's a really simple, great tool to help you find not just those propinquity points that you probably already know because you're paying attention to your category and you have an idea of where people congregate, but more importantly, it's a great way to find those places you don't know about. So it starts with social listening. If you have access to a social listening tool like a Radian, a Sysomos, or something like that, it's a lot easier to do it in those tools because they're designed to do this kind of listening. But frankly, you can do it with some of the simpler tools like Social Mention that are free, that allow you to do some searches. But basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to mine the online world, and this will happen mostly in Twitter, I think, is the best platform for this because it defaults to public. You can also do it in LinkedIn and Facebook and Google, but really I think you'll find Twitter is the best place to do this. So you're going to search for people that are using the keywords that would indicate they're in the market or they use or buy the product and services you sell. Or if you market to certain titles, you'll search for people who have those titles in their bios. Either way, you're going to find all those folks on Twitter, and you're going to dump them into a single Twitter list. Now, I would suggest that you put this Twitter list into like a product like a Hootsuite, which is a free social media platform management tool. And the reason for that is because then you can create a column in your Hootsuite that just has all of these people that are on this Twitter list. And if you need advice on how to build a Twitter list, if that's not something you're familiar with, just Google it. There's a billion places where people are going to show you how to do that. But the idea is you want to put everybody in this Twitter list, and then all you're looking for are what you see in front of you. You're looking for the links. You're looking for the links that people share. And what you're going to do is, you want to do this for at least 6 weeks, and then, I usually, once we do the initial round, then we continue to do it over time because it can change. What you're doing is you're trying to find what are the links that are being shared by these folks who you've identified as prospects for what you sell. Like I said, you can do the exact same thing in LinkedIn. Again, another reason to use Hootsuite is you can bring your LinkedIn stream into Hootsuite, and it frankly makes it a lot easier to monitor because it strips away all the feature photos and all the other garbage that LinkedIn puts there. It just gives you the core network update. And again, what you're looking for is the link. The idea with the link is that if somebody shares the link, okay, they obviously value that content because they've shared it. And if you could get your content on that website, you increase your opportunity for viral pass along because, again, these people are sharing the content. Now, the trick is, though, is just because you can publish on a particular URL or website doesn't mean you should. And the biggest mistake people make is somebody gives them an opportunity to guest post someplace or repurpose their content someplace, and they jump at it. That's not what you want to do because you can easily spend all your time publishing content on various websites trying to create propinquity. Instead, what you want to do is do this link analysis, and it's simple. Every time you find a link for the first time, put it into a spreadsheet, maybe make a little note what that site is. If you don't know it, it's not real obvious to you. And then every additional time you find it, just increase the share number column by 1. And what you will find is a couple of things. You might find, for instance, here in this this is a real live exercise we did. Mashable is a huge website. It has millions and millions and millions of readers, and most people, if they had an opportunity to publish on Mashable, would jump at it, assuming that that's a good place for them to be. But actually, if you look here, Mashable is not the best place for this particular client to be. If I was this client, if this was our active client we were working, I would tell them spend their time at special events, Event Manager blog, SIT magazine, and Planner Tech, because those are very niche, very target-rich environments, and they're being shared at a much higher rate than a Mashable. So while Mashable may give you more raw eyeballs, those 4 would tend to give you more targeted eyeballs. And this can be a really eye-opening process for people to go through because what it does, again, is most importantly, it will surface sites that you might have never heard of, might not be aware of, and that normally would not show up on a traditional influencer-type analysis because there's just not enough traffic going to those sites. But again, I would rather have my content on a site that gets 100 views a day, but 95 of those are prospective clients, than a site that gets 1 million views a day and 5 of them are prospective clients. You only have so much time to produce and publish this content, so you want to make sure you're putting it in the most target-rich environment you can. Now, once you put all of these propinquity points into this spreadsheet and you start to analyze it, you're probably going to come out with somewhere between, say, 15 to 30 propinquity points. And that's a lot of places, and the way you're going to behave in those places is going to differ based on what classification you put them in. So there's 2 classifications of propinquity points. The first is embassies. Now, embassies tend to be social media sites. Might be a Facebook group, might be a LinkedIn group, might be a Twitter chat. Sometimes it can be a website, especially if it's a website that maybe has a very active community in terms of in the comments. Could actually be a forum if you're in a really niche type of environment, or if you're in a niche category. Forums can be a great place, though a lot of people tend to not maybe pay as much attention to them as they should. But the idea in an embassy is it's a place where you know that it's a highly target-rich environment and where you intend to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort, because you know that if you can really raise your profile in this community, position yourself as authoritative, expert, guru, whatever name you want to give yourself, that can translate to business. So for myself, I do work in the tourism, the destination tourism space, and there's a private Facebook group, and there's probably 300 people plus in this group, of which 95% of them are destination marketing executives. They're the marketing director or the assistant marketing director, that, you know, they're somebody who hires digital consultants. And I spend a lot of time answering questions, providing free advice, just simply engaging with people, sharing helpful information that I found on the internet that I think they would find informative and helpful, and just really being there and keeping my profile high. And I can go back and I can literally link multiple contracts to people in this group. I can link speaking opportunities to people in this group, and I can link referrals. All of it because I'm in there every day giving away for free what normally I charge clients for. That's an example of an embassy. For many of you, LinkedIn groups could be great embassies. I've got some friends who are just doing great work by just simply being in LinkedIn groups and being helpful. Now, the other side of the house are what we call outposts. Outposts are almost always going to be websites or blogs. Outposts are like hotels. You check in, you check out. You check in when you publish your content to that outpost. These would be places where your propinquity analysis shows that your target audience is there and consuming content, but it's not your website, so you're going to go there and try to publish your content. And as you publish there, you're looking for two things. One is just, you know, awareness of who you are and the halo effect of being associated with that bigger brand. But secondly, you're looking to drive some traffic back to your website. You do that through embedding 1 to 2 anchor links in each piece that you put up. And those anchor links should be deeper knowledge where you're talking about something that's sort of a 30,000-foot level on someone else's blog, but you're providing a link that if someone wants to get down to the 6-foot level, real brass tacks, there's a website blog, there's a blog on your website that they can go and get that information. Okay? Outpost, the day you post, that blog is your blog. You have it up, you share it. If someone comments on it, you comment back. On that day, you treat their blog like it's your blog. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're publishing on a blog, everybody's blog is your blog. And a lot of people get caught up in, oh, I should only produce content for my blog. I shouldn't be producing content for other people because I need a big, deep, rich, heavy blog full of content so that I can win the Google war and I can be, you know, ranking for my keywords, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the problem with that. Only 10 people win a Google war. 97%, 95% of people never go past page 1 of Google results. And in fact, when you look at the click data in the research studies, it really favors the top 5. And when you think about it, Google doesn't really want you to rank. Because if you can rank organically, why would you buy Google ads? So while Google will never say it out loud, they're kind of at war with you. They're going to keep playing with the algorithm, and they always do it under the guise of, well, we want to, keep the people who are doing the black hat SEO stuff at bay and make this a better search. And certainly that is true. They are trying to do that. But there's also a hidden goal of, we don't really want you to rank either because we want you to have to buy the keyword. We want you to buy the ad. We want to make our tool useful so people keep using it and coming to it so you as a marketer feel like you got to be there, but we'd really much rather you pay to be there than do it for free. So when you put all that together, you start saying, wow, the competition for the right keywords is tough. And the chance as you as an individual content creator to beat out a social media examiner or a copy blogger or a marketing props or somebody that's like a big multi-author media house is very unlikely, but you don't have to. If you can go right for those people who are winning the Google war already and put your content there, hey, it's just as good, especially if you're very talented and really do a good job of working your anchor text to draw those people from that outline propinquity post down into your own website. And that's the next big thing you're probably going to have to take a good hard look at. Again, I can't see all your websites, so I don't know this for a fact, but I would be willing to bet, and I am not a gambler, that 95% plus of you do not have a funnel optimized website. Your website probably looks darn pretty. It probably makes a great brand impression, but it is not funnel optimized. And if it's not funnel optimized, you probably are losing opportunities to convert inbound traffic that's invisible to visible sales leads. And here's what I mean by funnel optimized. There's two types of funnels on any website. There's the static funnel and the dynamic. Now, the static funnel you probably have under control because that's your navigation system. So most people have put a little bit of thought into their navigation system. They've designed it so that it moves you methodically through the information and gets you to where you need to be. For instance, my own website, we have 4 primary funnels. These are our static funnels. When you come in, you're either going to go to the product funnel. So this is what we do. And if you're in this funnel, you are learning about us, and you're probably thinking about hiring us or whether or not you need us, and that's great. But one of the things we know is that most people pop into this funnel, they pop right back out. They're simply doing research, okay? Now, once they go to actually come in and do business with us, they'll come back and pop in, but they tend to pop in and pop out. So the bigger funnel for us, the one we put the most focus on, and the one, frankly, you should put the most focus on, is what we call the Get to Know You funnel. And that's here, these 2 boxes, the blog by email sign-up box, the insight and information, which is our monthly newsletter box, and, of course, the blog posts themselves, which all are designed to make you feel good about the content and want to receive it via email. Now, we call this the Get to Know You funnel because it's not necessarily get to know you as in I want them to get to know me. That's certainly part of it because of the propinquity theory. But more importantly to me, and more importantly to you as an independent consultant, is you want them to sign up to get this stuff by email because then you can get to know them. You see, if you will take your website, and if you're not doing this, you should always make your blog available, your content available through RSS feed, which allows it to be delivered by email. But what you want to do is use, like I use MailChimp for this, because then what it does is it puts them inside your tracking system. It used to be a lot of people would use these RSS to email tools that Google provided that was great. It would deliver your blog post on FeedBurner or something every day or week or whenever you publish, but you didn't get any tracking data. By using something like a MailChimp or any of the other, pretty much all of the other email systems have this, you can deliver that post through the MailChimp system, and then you get trackable data on who clicks on what. And this becomes very, very helpful because then what you can do is as you start to combine this data with other information you know about a prospect, because now remember, they're not invisible, they're visible. They've given you a name and at least a valid email address. Now you can add to that name and email address. You can start to figure out what they're clicking on. And if you pay attention to what they're clicking on, you can start to understand what their buying signals are that they're sending you. They're telling you what their pain point is. And this is way more effective and way more accurate than anything you're ever going to get on a cold call. Because when we're talking to a salesperson, we are just habitually vague. We're habitually not going to tell them everything because we don't want the salesperson or the vendor to get the upper hand in a negotiation. But what people don't realize is that when they're clicking on your content, they're telling you what their pain points are. And they're being really unguarded with that. And so it's fabulous because when you start to do this over time, you can build a really nice profile on what somebody needs. And then when you start to reach out to them or then you have a conversation with them, you know exactly what to sell them or exactly what they need. And if you do decide to do some sort of a clutter buster or a direct mail piece, or you do decide to call them or say, hey, we're both going to be at the same conference, let's go have a cup of coffee, you know what to talk to them about. It's super, super powerful. So it's really, really important. And you'll notice if you go to our site, we devote a lot of real estate to getting people to sign up for email. And this is why, because it is absolutely the most powerful thing you can do. I also do a lot of public speaking, so we have a speaking funnel. And then this funnel actually right now is my book because to me that's probably one of the most powerful propinquity tools that I have going for me. And so we're pushing the sales of the book right now. But once we finish with that, we'll go back to this, and this is our digital briefings. And what I like about this is where, again, people can send me really a lot of buying signals by what they click on. So, for instance, if you were to go in and you had clicked on this, you would come in and you'd be presented with 3 options. Do you want to learn more about our workshops and webinars, or our ebooks and briefings, or our insight and information, which, again, there's that newsletter, that email. At a minimum, I really want to capture their email. But the other thing is if they go into ebooks or if they go into workshops, they're telling me something about themselves. People who go to workshops and webinars are inherently interactive learners. They're interactive by nature. People who tend to favor ebooks and briefings tend to be more analytical and more just, hey, send me the memo, let me read it, I'll call you if I have a question. They process information differently. Again, that's a buying signal. It helps me understand when I finally go to talk to them, how do they want to be interacted with? How do they want information presented to them so that I can have a more effective sales process. Obviously, if you go in and say, I want an ebook or a white paper, you're going to pick from the white papers that you want. In this case, if you pick this white paper, I know you're interested in mobile, and I'm guessing you're probably in the tourism destination space. You can see in the little download area, we're actually able to ask that information. And again, because this is all being processed via email, we are going to append that information to their record. So now we know they're into mobile, they're a tourism marketer, here's their name and email address. All that's going into our CRM system. Last thing I would tell you, because I'm sure this is nothing new, many of you are allowing people to download and stuff, but the last thing I would tell you to look at is this. We used to have the standard traditional thank you page, and that's great, but that's sort of ending the conversation. So what we did many years ago is we changed it, and we added the part you see at the bottom where we sort of redirected somebody. Said, hey, great, you know, you're look at your email because your white paper's on the way, but in the meantime, here's some free resources, here's a free newsletter. The moment we made this change, you would be surprised at the amount of Google traffic that now reverses itself back up to those two pages. And again, the free newsletter is a chance to get more data if they haven't signed up for the newsletter. The free resources is our blog. So what we're doing is they've already shown a willingness to download information. They've shown a desire for the information. We're going to send them back to the big information portals that we offer. Great tip, really keeps them around, and it did raise both blog and newsletter subs. Now, that's the static. Here's the dynamic, and this is the piece y'all are all probably missing because most people aren't. If you're blogging, most of you probably have a most popular content widget or most commented. Those are the two favorite. I would say get rid of that. Go get yourself a related content widget like this, and here's why. When you come to this site, if you read a blog post, this one's about how to improve your marketing, your digital marketing strategy. Okay, I can relatively safely assume that you're interested in improving digital marketing strategy, but that's a very broad field, right? It breaks into mobile and social and content marketing, etc. So what I can do is when I put up this post or any post, I can hand select all of the content that's going to show up in the related content area. And what it allows me to do is put up different sort of information offers, if you will. And by figuring out what you click on next, I can then again help append and understand what are your pain points, what are your real needs. Not to mention what I'm doing is I'm creating a funnel dynamically, because each post is done like this, and as you get into that second and third clicked content, you get into where you start seeing it, you know, instead of being 4 different types of digital marketing, it'll all be social media posts, but it'll be different flavors of social media, ROI versus B2B versus B2C. And again, I'm building a dynamic funnel that at the end is going to help you winding up either at a subscription to a white paper or a blog or a contact us. This is the biggest piece that most folks are missing. Think about how you can dynamically start to move people down through your content. Don't rely on them understanding how to navigate your site to get to the place you want them to get to, which is a lead gen form. Now, as you probably could figure it out, this process is very content intensive, which is the part that scares the bejesus out of most people, especially folks like us that are one or two person shops. And how am I going to produce all this content? Very fair question. Trick is you have to apply a system. Okay, you have to have a system and a process. The first thing you have to do is you have to stop thinking about producing content in the individual object environment. So when I talk to people about content, they want to go, oh, yeah, I'm doing content, and they talk about their blog post or their podcast or their YouTube video. They always talk about it as a singular item. That is the biggest mistake you can make. You cannot produce enough singular items. You don't have enough time unless you just don't have any clients to build. Instead, you have to think in an ecosystem. So here's what I mean by that. I try never to produce anything once. If I produce a post for my blog, as I'm writing the post, I'm thinking about what are the 2 or 3 guest posts that I could create out of this blog by simply, you know, maybe focusing on one area of the blog and post and blowing that one area up into an additional post, or maybe taking the blog post and changing the angle. What I mean by that is this: there's a post that I wrote last spring about using audio to text software to write. In fact, I wrote entire chapters of the book with this, and so it's a really helpful content tool. And so in the post, I define the options that you can do, because there's a couple of different ways to do it. I talked about 2 of the big benefits. One is that, there's no downtime. You can, while you're driving in the car, you can be writing a blog post or writing a white paper or whatever. It's also a great way to get over writer's block. So, simple little post. But then we took that and we blew that out. We took the mobile piece, which was part of the options, and we said, okay, write your next blog post with your mobile phone. And the whole post was just about that one piece of the original post, and we gave that to a website to put up. We took that mobile angle and we twisted it a little. We went to Marketing Profs, who likes to have fun with their posts. We gave them one that said lose weight by blogging, and we showed, we basically gave a quick 700-word how-to that you can, if you're somebody who likes to use the elliptical or the treadmill, you can basically exercise and write at the same time, which is two of the things everybody says they don't have time to do. And it was fun and it was well received. Then we took that last piece, that writer's block, and we blew that one piece up into one big post, and we gave that to someone else. It took me about 2.5 hours to do the first post. It took me about an hour to do the next 3. That's how it works. But you have to be thinking like that when you craft and create the content. Never, ever do it once. Always look for ways to repurpose everything you're doing, because that's the thing. That's how you develop a lot of propinquity. You put a lot of content out there, both on your own site, but more importantly on a whole lot of other people's sites. The whole thing I call cobblestones and cornerstones, and the whole idea is this. You want to get to a place where ideally you're building a big piece of cornerstone content, a white paper, a major presentation, a major thought piece, a book, an ebook, whatever, something that's big. And then you want to take that and you want to start breaking that down. If it's an ebook or a white paper, figure out how to very quickly turn it into a conference presentation. Once you have it as a conference presentation, record it to make a live webinar, not unlike we're doing here. Record it to make a recorded webinar. Again, not unlike MBO Partners is doing here. You can take those webinars and put them on YouTube, on Vimeo. YouTube's the second most searched search engine in the world. You can put it on SlideShare, where lots of people are going to look for information. You can pull out and do an audio piece. That becomes a podcast. You can put the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. 2 more places to find more people and let them trip over your content. And then the obvious, you can break that cornerstone into blog posts. Those blog posts can then be treated as ecosystems to make guest posts. You can use the content as a come on to get invited to do podcasts. You can even use it for offline, article submissions, etc. All of this stuff to the right comes out of the thing to the left, the cornerstone. But here's the one thing I want to point out to you, and this is there's a big error on this slide, and the error is this. Notice the arrows are pointing from right to left. That's backwards. Unfortunately, that's how most people do it, but I would encourage you to do it from right to left. Sit down and map all of those propinquity points that we talked about earlier. Go in and not just where those places are, but go in and really look at what is their editorial point of view. What kind of content do they like? What do their readers like? What do their readers like or would like but isn't there? Okay? Map all of that. Write it on individual pieces of paper. Put it up on a wall in your office. Treat it like a puzzle. And then I want you to take those puzzle pieces and I want you to reverse engineer the cornerstone content. Now, it'll never reverse engineer perfectly. The puzzle will never go completely together. You're always going to be missing a few pieces. That's okay. You craft those pieces, you work everything together, and what you will find is that it becomes really pretty easy to build that piece of cornerstone content. And once it's built, it's already built in such a way as to be disassembled into its individual cobblestones that you're going to use to build propinquity all over the internet. In fact, if those are 30 of you that get the book today, I want you, when you get the book, I want you to leaf through it. The first thing you're going to notice is it's very compartmentalized, because this is how I wrote the book. I looked at all of the places I wanted to put content. I looked at what kind of content those places needed. I put it on a wall, and I literally mapped it backwards. And what you will see is the book's in 4 sections. Each section more or less stands on its own. Each of the chapters within each section more or less stands on its own. You don't really have to have read Chapter 1 to understand Chapter 4. And when you go inside the chapters, you're going to see they break down into little pieces. All of it was designed to be deconstructed. And over the course of actually the next couple of weeks, I've got a couple of folks who are literally, I'm hiring a couple of VAs. They're going to take that book and they're going to deconstruct it into 45 guest posts that I will scatter throughout my propinquity program this year, that I'm not going to have to rewrite because I've already written the content. More importantly, the whole book was written in 6 months, start to finish. because all I was doing was sort of filling out an outline when you think about it. If you will look and do this, if you'll spend the time planning up front, as opposed to that, instead of writing and then trying to figure out where to put the content, plan where the content needs to be, kind of what the content needs to look and sound like, reverse engineer the big piece of Cornerstone, whether it's a book or a white paper or whatever. What you will find is this is a much more efficient way to do it, and then you can go get a virtual assistant or sometimes even a really smart intern, and you can hand it over to them, and with a relatively good bit of ease, they can then deconstruct it back out. Folks, if you will do this, if you will follow this content-driven, propinquity-driven process, what I think you will find is what I have found. It becomes very easy to establish a reputation. It becomes very easy to position yourself as an authority, as an expert, and most importantly, it becomes very easy to start generating inbound leads to your company that already pretty much know they want to do business with you. So then now your business development process becomes respond to the lead, answer some questions, price out a proposal, and then start doing business, which is inherently easier and converts at a much higher percentage. I've left about 15 minutes for Q&A. As I said, if you don't get a chance to ask or answer a question, maybe you just don't even like to ask questions in public forums, there's my email address. Please feel free to use it. You can follow me on Twitter, and I'm going to turn it back over to the fine folks at MBO to open up the Q&A session.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. That was a lot of information, really great content. We have some good questions that I'd like to share. One of the questions that we had from Steve was, can you track a website visitor path without requiring a login to a website?
Can you track, so I think what the question is, can you track a visitor who has never logged in or provided an email address or identifiable information?
Yeah.
The short answer is the short answer is no. That's why you want to get them to download something. If you look at any of the marketing automation solutions, Infusionsoft, HubSpot, Marketo, any of that stuff, it's all based on getting somebody to download something, and then they can cookie that person. And then, once they come back, you're tracking everything they do. And that's that whole sales radar thing I talk about in the book. It's really powerful. There are companies who will purport to be able to track people who have not downloaded something previously. I've not actually used any of them, to be honest with you. I would assume that what they're doing is picking up cookies in other sites, and then where somebody has registered for something, and that cookie is still resident on the computer. And so, if that person shows up that's been cookied elsewhere, then they can track them through your site. But again, I don't quote me on that because I haven't used any of them myself.
Okay. We have a lot of people asking. You referenced a few social listening tools early in the presentation and some marketing websites that assist in promoting folks' sites and services. Can you list some of the ones that you had referenced?
Yeah, the listening tools. Social Mention is a free tool, which is really nice. It just doesn't. I don't think you can actually save your searches. Radian 6 is a pretty inexpensive tool. If what you're trying to do is just pure listening and some basic analysis, that can be a really good tool. It's about $600 a month or $800, something like that. My favorite is Sysomos, which is SYSOMOS. Super, super powerful, but pricey. It's about $35,000 a year. But it is really an effective tool for defining propinquity points and for defining influencers. And who's influencing the people that you want to influence. So really good tools there. Viral Heat's another one that a lot of people like that's a little bit less expensive. And then, if you just do Google social listening software, you'll probably uncover a few more. It seems like there's a new one popping up every day.
We're getting lots of questions. One is, if your business requires face-to-face exchanges before a buy-in, how should that be included in part of your propinquity plan?
Great question. It usually will. I mean, I will tell you, I don't know that I've actually ever closed a piece of business that I haven't at least video conferenced with somebody. Right. Usually there's some sort of a face-to-face meeting that's involved, and it's usually right at the end. It's sort of that last little, I want to make sure I really want to do business, I like you, you're not a schmo kind of meeting. The one thing I would tell you there is when you're approaching someone and you're having that face-to-face or even the phone conversations, and they're an inbound lead that has come to you from a Propinquity style process, you have to approach them fundamentally differently than you've been taught in traditional sales prospecting. I call it a keto selling. Because in Aikido, the idea is to use the opponent's own momentum against them in the fight. And it's the same kind of a thing. When you get a self-educated buyer, they're really proud of the fact they've self-educated. They're really proud of the fact that they think they have all the answers. And so you have to be very careful not to sell them. You have to understand that they're talking to you because they want to complete their education. They want to make sure that they're making the right decision. So you just want to help them complete their education. And so it's more of a responsive than say maybe a proactive style of meeting. And you want to just help them complete their education in a way that favors you and your solution and your company as the most favorable solution. And so it tends to be very more of a question and answer type approach than a maybe sort of traditional pitch type approach. It's more, let me know what you need to know versus let me tell you about me. Because if you approach them the old-fashioned way, you really turn them off because it's like you're disrespecting all the work that they did in their own self-education process.
And we have another one that says, how frequently do you create the Cornerstone Cornerstone content that you parse out into the Cobblestones that you had showed on your slide? Is that once a week? Is it once a month? Like, how often are you having that core Cornerstone content?
Well, I think that depends obviously on the size of the Cornerstone. The book, I'll probably, I've been writing the book for the last few months, and I'll probably write it, for the balance of the year. There's so much there that I can break apart and put together in various ways to create unique and helpful content in different places. But I would say that most folks, if you're not doing a book, if you're more at the white paper ebook stage, once a quarter, you're building a good enough piece that can be broken into, say, 10 or 12 other pieces. You're in pretty good shape at that point. I mean, on a given year, I will do maybe 40 to 50 guest posts around the internet. So that'll be probably anywhere from 10 to 12 sites for 3 to 5 times per site. You almost can't publish more frequently than that on someone else's site because, they've got other people, other authors. And so just to get yourself into this publishing cycle, you're probably not going to get more than 3 to 5 opportunities. And you probably don't need more than 3 to 5 opportunities, frankly. Because, again, what you'll find a lot of times is your propinquity points, if you're doing it right, the person, your target audience, isn't just reading you at one of those points. They're likely reading multiple points that you're at. And so they're seeing you, if you publish 3 times a year at each site and they read both sites religiously, well, they're going to see you 6 times. So you get a little bit of that. But I would say if you shoot for once a quarter for a major piece of content that you can then break down in these various parts to, say, 10 or 12 pieces, you'll be doing better than the average bear.
And then we had a follow-up question to that says, if you've developed something for a client, let's say like a training, we have someone who wants to know, is it advisable to convert that to a Cornerstone content?
Oh, God, yeah. I think now you want to do it in a way that it sells your service. So, for instance, I'm almost positive it's the blog post we have up this right now on our website at Converse Digital is a post that talks about, how do you get your B2B sales force to adopt social selling techniques? Because that's a very common challenge that our clients come to us with. They're the marketing people. They believe in this stuff. They can't get their sales guys and gals to believe in it. How do I get them to buy into this? Well, just so happens we do workshops and training. We have a whole package of services for that. So if you go read that post today, that post is selling our service basically. But what it's doing is it's explaining the steps that you would go through to help get a sales force to buy into a painless prospecting service. But in each of those steps, you'll see links that basically take you to our service offering. So, we've basically taken a product that we do for a client, we've turned it into a blog post, not necessarily a major piece of content, but then we're using that to educate somebody and at each step going, oh, and by the way, if you can't do this yourself, we can do it for you. And that's a very effective lead generation process.
We'll do one last question, just so we can stay within the time. I have one from John that says, in traditional selling, an organization may develop a target list of prospects. How does that change with your process?
The way it changes is twofold. One, there's no reason why you still wouldn't have a targeted list. I mean, there are companies and people I would love to work for, and absolutely I will monitor those people and stalk them on the internet and try to find excuses to get them to run into me or my content. But the way this changes it is it says, I'm not going to necessarily worry about targeting particular people to do business with. I'm going to make myself more targetable. So any company who could use what I sell, I'm going to make it really easy for them to find me, qualify me, and figure out I'm the best solution so that the business comes into me. And what happens is you end up getting leads from companies you've never heard of, but they've heard of you. And again, you close them faster because they already have their own pain point. They know what it is, and they've already figured out you're probably a good solution for that pain point. And so it turns the funnel on its head, and it really opens you up. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that in that traditional model that John speaks of, we tend to live inside that database, that marketing database or prospect database, and we don't know what we don't know. And what we don't know oftentimes is the company right under our nose wants to buy what we have to sell, but because they're not in our database, they're not in our list, we're not actively marketing to that company, and so they might go hire someone else because they just don't know about us. And that's really what it is. You're going to market to everybody and let them figure out you're the right person versus you targeting them and trying to prove that you're the right person.
Oh, thanks so much, Tom. We're going to wind it down. Just wanted to remind everybody that thank you so much, Tom, for your presentation. We've got so much interest and questions. I want to remind everybody that we will be mailing a copy of this presentation along with the slides, and you'll see that early next week, and that Tom's book, we'll be giving away 30 copies of it, but it's called The Invisible Sale, and you can find out more about its availability and where you can get it at theinvisiblesale.com. And Tom, just thank you so much. You can follow Tom at Tom Martin on Twitter, and we're just honored to have you here today, and thanks again for a great presentation. Very, very informative.
Well, thank you all for having me. Hopefully it helps everybody on the webinar have a much better, more profitable 2014.
All right. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.